The rusty bell hanging on the glass door jingled softly, letting out a hoarse, offbeat sound that nearly fell out of sync with the steady patter of rain on the awning outside. Ethan Miller stepped into the old ice cream shop on Greenway Street, his wet shoes leaving faint, blurry prints on the cracked grey tiles that had weathered the years. He pulled his baseball cap lower, tilted his head up slightly, and let his eyes scan the room. The flickering fluorescent lights blinked on and off, casting uneven light over tables sticky with dried ice cream and stained with coffee rings. Last summer's promotional poster still hung on the wall, its corners curled and yellowed. The air carried a faint, sweet caramel scent, tangled with the musty odor of old wood and rain, pulling Ethan back into a memory a single afternoon when he and his daughter once sat together, sharing a homemade caramel ice cream, her eyes sparkling as the spoon touched her lips. But today, there was no little voice calling him Daddy when he walked into this place. "Welcome to Happy Scoops." "What would you like?" a young woman's voice called out, flat, without even lifting her eyes from the phone screen. On her faded uniform shirt, a crooked name tag read Rosa in smudged marker. "1 caramel vanilla scoop, please," Ethan replied, his voice calm, though his heart was tightening in his chest. Rosa nodded, stepped away from the counter, shouted the order to the back, and lowered her eyes back to her phone. Ethan looked around. Empty napkin dispensers, the caramel topping bar reduced to a few dried streaks, the ice cream freezer patched up with strips of tape, and tarnished stainless steel spoons lying jumbled in a tray of murky water. This wasn't the Happy Scoops Ethan had built with his bare hands. This wasn't the dream he once held close, the one he fought to turn into the first place in the neighborhood with a handmade ice cream machine for underprivileged kids, the place where he taught his daughter to make caramel using brown sugar, butter, and drops of real vanilla. And now, everything was falling apart. Other branches were reporting declining sales. Customers were complaining about the quality. Debts were piling up. But the most painful blow came when Ethan read the internal reports the Greenway branch was on the brink of bankruptcy. Despite stable revenue that made no sense, the ice cream machine groaned from the back. A young man named Dylan stepped out, setting the cup of ice cream on the counter with a forced smile, dark circles under his eyes, his apron dotted with dry ice cream stains. "Here you go. Enjoy," Dylan said, his voice tired. Ethan took the spoon, gently scooped up a bite of vanilla ice cream laced with caramel, and brought it to his mouth. The creamy sweetness melted, a richer, deeper, more refined caramel flavor spreading across his tongue. For a moment, Ethan's eyes widened, his hand pausing mid-air. It was a caramel taste he knew well, but it wasn't the caramel he and his team had spent 10 years perfecting. This was not the caramel of Happy Scoops. Ethan swallowed, feeling like he was forcing down a stone, then set the cup down and took a deep breath. His eyes drifted to the foggy window, where raindrops slid down, tracing lines like tears across the glass. "Who's destroying my dream? Right here in the home I built with sweat, tears, and my heart." The bell above the door chimed again as a customer entered, but Ethan didn't turn around. He stood there, looking at the ice cream, looking at the reflection of his tired face in the tarnished spoons. That day, Ethan left the Greenway ice cream shop with his cap pulled even lower, his steps heavy, his hands clenched inside his jacket pockets. He turned the corner, melting into the grey rain, leaving behind a shop where the lights were slowly dimming. But in that moment, Ethan Miller made a promise to himself he would come back, and he would uncover the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. The next night, Ethan sat in his small apartment, the desk lamp casting a soft yellow glow over financial reports, handwritten notebooks, and a half-melted cup of caramel ice cream. Outside, the street was quiet except for the occasional car and the soft tapping of rain on the windowsill. He set the spoon down, looking into the silent emptiness of the room, where his daughter's laughter used to echo as she ran around with a spoonful of ice cream, leaving caramel footprints on the wood floor. That memory now felt like broken fragments, rattling inside a man worn down by the fight to save his company. "Happy Scoops is bleeding," Ethan whispered, his eyes scanning the bright red numbers on the balance sheets. The Greenway branch he had just left, once the pride of the system, now reported stable revenue, yet the inventory numbers, operating costs, and caramel usage didn't match up. Everything appeared to run too smoothly, and that was the sign of something much bigger hiding underneath. He picked up a stainless steel spoon, turning it over, watching his reflection under the yellow light. Dark circles, tired eyes, but a spark of determination still burned there. Ethan knew, if he wanted to save his company, he would have to go back not as a CEO, but as a silent observer, digging down to the root. The next morning, Ethan put on a faded denim jacket, an old baseball cap, and worn work boots. He took a deep breath in front of the mirror, adjusting his posture, his eyes, his smile, everything to hide who he really was. On the temporary job application under the name Ethan Moore, he wrote janitorial work, willing to work night shifts, flexible hours. No one at the Greenway branch knew that the man applying was the founder of Happy Scoops. The glass door quivered softly as he stepped in, the bell ringing just like the day before. Rosa glanced at him, her eyes flicking quickly before nodding with the same bland disinterest. "You're the guy applying for janitorial." "Right. Wait here." She walked to the back, leaving Ethan standing in the caramel-scented air. He looked at the loose chairs, the trash cans overflowing with dirty napkins, the stainless steel spoons piled in soapy water, reflecting the dull morning light. A young man stepped out from the back, hair messy, eyes red and tired, holding a clipboard, a name tag on his shirt reading, "Mike. You're Ethan Moore." "Right. We need someone to clean up. Night shifts will include cleaning counters, mopping floors, organizing the storage. It's not a hard job." Ethan nodded. "No problem. I need the work." Mike gave a slight smile, but it vanished quickly, his eyes scanning Ethan before he turned away. "Follow me. I'll show you where the supplies are." The small storage room behind the shop was cold, smelled of mildew, with cardboard boxes stacked in a chaotic mess, cheap caramel tubs piled high. Ethan quietly observed, memorizing every position. When Mike left, Ethan pulled out a small notebook he had hidden in his jacket pocket, jotting down caramel brands, inventory counts, and delivery dates printed on the boxes. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote, but his eyes stayed sharp, determined. That evening, the shop was quiet, only a few young customers picking up ice cream to go. Ethan pushed the mop slowly across the floor, his eyes flicking toward the caramel counter where Rosa was scooping caramel from an odd-looking glass jar Ethan had never seen in the system. Each time she scooped caramel from that jar, Rosa's eyes darted toward the back door before she quickly closed the lid again. Ethan could feel something was happening, like a hidden current beneath thin ice. At the end of the shift, as everyone was getting ready to leave, Ethan stood there for a moment, looking at the dull neon lights reflecting on the freshly cleaned stainless steel counters he had just wiped down. He wondered to himself, do they even know what they're doing, or are they just trying to survive, like I did, back then? Stepping out of the shop, the cold night air hit his face, but Ethan didn't pull up his collar. He tilted his head up to the night sky, taking a long breath. The next morning, Ethan returned early, the sky still draped in a thin mist. The door opened, the bell chiming louder in the quiet space. Mike stood behind the counter, holding a coffee cup, nodding at Ethan. "You're early. It's going to be a busy day." Ethan just smiled, setting his backpack down in the corner, rolling up his sleeves, and started wiping down the counters. As his hands moved over the cold steel, his eyes discreetly watched every corner of the caramel station, each topping jar used, every wet stainless steel spoon. By noon, the shop was bustling with high school students and office workers grabbing ice cream on their lunch break. Ethan stood cleaning the counters, his eyes on Rosa, who was swiftly scooping caramel from the unmarked glass jar. The rich, thick caramel, sending out a far more enticing scent than the usual Happy Scoops caramel. Each time Rosa scooped from that jar, her eyes flicked toward the back, where Dylan, the young kitchen helper, was carrying out trays of ice cream, his gaze distant, but his hands tightening slightly whenever the jar was opened. Ethan caught that look, a look of someone hiding something, someone trapped between right and wrong, without the courage to speak up. In the afternoon, when the rush died down, Ethan slipped into the cold storage to check napkins and toppings, as Mike had asked. The cold air hit his face, and he took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the boxes. He saw a cardboard box placed upside down, and when he flipped it over, the words "Caramel Premium, Cream-X Distribution" stared back at him in fresh, clear print. Ethan's heart gave a hard thump. Cream-X was Happy Scoop's direct competitor, always undercutting prices, fighting for market share on every block. Why was Cream-X's product here, in his own company's stockroom? Without any approved purchase order, Ethan pulled out his phone, snapping a photo of the box label, his hand trembling slightly as he clicked, his breath forming thin wisps in the freezing air. As Ethan stepped out of the cold storage, he caught Dylan's eyes at the doorway, the young man holding a tray of stainless steel spoons, his face clearly confused. "What? What are you doing?" Dylan asked, his voice uncertain. Ethan gave a gentle smile. "Just checking inventory for Mike, that's all." Dylan nodded, his eyes lingering on Ethan longer than necessary before turning away, walking quickly back into the kitchen. But Ethan had already seen it, the slight tremble in Dylan's hands, like someone afraid of being found out. That night, after the last customer had left, Ethan wiped down the tables, his eyes watching Rosa as she locked the register while Mike checked the delivery orders for the next day. Outside, the streetlights cast blurry reflections on the damp tiles through the glass doors. Mike spoke softly to Rosa. "They're delivering more caramel tomorrow. Make sure you put it away in the back. Don't let anyone see the label." Rosa glanced at Ethan, worry flashing in her eyes. "Are you sure this is okay? I don't want any trouble." Mike squeezed her shoulder lightly, his voice lowering. "Trust me. If we do it right, we'll all be fine." A few steps away, Ethan's hand slowed as he wiped the table, his eyes dropping, breath tightening in his chest. Each word landed in his ears like cold stones dropping one by one into still water. When the shop was finally locked up, Ethan stepped out into the street, the night air brushing his face, carrying the scent of rain and the chill of empty streets. Inside him, a dull ache swelled, not because of betrayal, but because he saw himself in Rosa, in Dylan, even in Mike. The years when he had struggled to survive, forced to accept decisions that weren't entirely right just to pay the bills at the end of the month. Ethan walked through the night, gripping the phone with the photo of the Cream X caramel box, his mind swirling with questions. Who's behind this? Why Cream X? And why are they choosing to silently infiltrate my own system? That night, Ethan sat at the small desk in his apartment, the yellow lamp reflecting off the photos, notebooks, and reports spread out before him. He looked at his reflection in the dark screen of his phone, the dark circles under his eyes clear, but the spark of determination still burning. Tomorrow, I'm going deeper. If I want to save Happy Scoops, I need to know who's tearing it apart and why. Ethan closed the notebook and turned off the light. But in the darkness, his eyes remained open, listening to the rhythm of his own breathing, like he was listening to the faint heartbeat of Happy Scoops, the child of his spirit he had built with everything he had. Early in the morning, as the city was still covered in mist, Ethan sat in a small cafe near the shop, his hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee, eyes watching the quiet street outside. Weak rays of sunlight pierced through the leaves, lighting up the sidewalks damp with night dew. He opened his laptop, scrolling through revenue reports, inventory sheets, and expense statements from the Greenway branch. The numbers all looked stable, but Ethan knew the stability was coldly fake. In one column, reported caramel usage was 25% lower than the system's average. Yet customers at Greenway kept commenting that the caramel ice cream tastes so much better. A strange contradiction. Ethan flipped open his small notebook, where he had written down the labels, quantities, and delivery dates of the suspicious Cream X caramel boxes. They couldn't have had those shipments without someone in the Happy Scoops system allowing it to happen. In the afternoon, Ethan returned to the shop as Ethan Moore, the janitor. Mike stood behind the counter, on the phone, speaking in a lowered voice, his eyes darting toward the door repeatedly. "Yes, I understand. Tomorrow. Right. No. No one suspects anything. Yes, I'll take it." Ethan stood a few steps away, wiping the ice cream display glass, listening to every word. When Mike hung up, he turned around, startled to see Ethan's eyes on him. "Is there a problem?" Mike asked, his voice a bit sharp. Ethan smiled lightly. "No, just wondering if it's busy today." Mike nodded, avoiding Ethan's gaze, then turned away. In the storeroom, Ethan watched Dylan carrying in a caramel box, breathing heavily as he set it down, his eyes tense as he looked at the Cream X label on the box. "Need a hand with that?" Ethan offered. Dylan looked startled, but then nodded. Together, they lifted the box onto a shelf deep in the corner. As they set it down, Ethan saw the old caramel boxes with the Happy Scoops label covered in dust, while the Cream X boxes were new, bright, lined up neatly. That night, as Ethan was cleaning the counter, Rosa approached him, her voice trembling as she spoke softly. "Mr. Moore, I know you're not like the others." Ethan looked up, his eyes softening. "What do you mean, Rosa?" She glanced around, her voice nearly a whisper. They pay me extra every week if I use the new caramel. They said no one would find out. Mike said it was the new way to help the company grow. But I'm scared." Rosa's eyes glistened, the neon lights reflecting off the tears that were ready to fall. Ethan placed his hand gently over hers, his voice low and warm. "You did the right thing telling me. Don't be afraid." That night, Ethan sat in his apartment, the laptop casting a glow in the darkened room. He searched for information on Cream X, their distribution companies, and rumors of Cream X taking over small ice cream shops by price support and free product supply, then seizing entire systems when their competitors could no longer pay their debts. Ethan's hand tightened as he read the line, "Cream X once quietly destroyed the Frosty Treat system by planting inside employees, changing supply chains, raising costs, and then buying the entire company for cheap." He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, his wife's face appearing in his mind, with her gentle smile and warm eyes, as if saying, "Don't let this company become what you once promised it never would." The next morning, Ethan stepped out of his apartment, sunlight falling across a face weathered by storms. In his hand were files, his notebook, and a phone filled with photographic evidence. His steps were steady, but his heart was heavy. He knew that moving forward could mean losing everything, or it could save Happy Scoops from the trap someone was setting. No matter how this ends, I can't just stand by, Ethan told himself, striding toward the Greenway branch, ready to face whatever truth was waiting for him. That evening, a light rain fell, streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement, stretching the pale yellow lights into trembling ribbons. Ethan stood tucked against a brick wall behind the shop, his old jacket soaked, hair plastered with rain, his eyes fixed on the back door. Ajar, the rain fell steadily, drowning out the pounding of his heart as headlights swept across the alley. A small, unmarked van pulled up, its license plate caked in mud, lights switching off as it stopped. The door opened, and a man in a black raincoat stepped out, carrying a thick plastic bag. The back door of the shop opened, and Mike appeared, his cap worn backward, eyes scanning the surroundings before nodding to the man. They exchanged a few quick words. Then Mike took the bag, shoving it into the backpack on his shoulder. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone in his pocket as he adjusted the camera, recording the entire exchange in the rain, the dim light capturing Mike's face, the face of a young man who once smiled while serving ice cream, now showing clear worry and calculation. The man pulled out an envelope, handing it to Mike, patting him on the shoulder before returning to the van, driving off into the rainy night. Ethan stood still, rain dripping down his neck, cold, but he did not move. Mike stood for a moment, staring at the envelope, his face torn with hesitation, before slipping it into his pocket and heading back into the shop. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart heavy. Now the truth was no longer in question. Cream X was indeed involved, and Mike was a link in the plan to sabotage the system from within. When Ethan returned to the counter to finish cleaning, Mike came out, startled to see Ethan still there. "You're still here?" Mike asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Still a few tables left to wipe down." Ethan replied, his eyes not leaving the backpack Mike placed by the counter. Mike hesitated, then turned away, washing his hands under the faucet, eyes down, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Later that night, as the shop closed, Mike walked out first, the backpack on his shoulders, his cap pulled low to hide his face. Ethan followed behind, walking slowly through the rain, watching Mike's silhouette blend into the darkness. Ethan walked along the street, rain clinging to his pant legs, cold, but inside him burned a hot flame. He remembered the nights working overtime, cleaning each table himself, mixing the first batches of caramel that created happy scoops. He remembered his daughter's eyes as she took her first bite of ice cream, round and bright with happiness. He couldn't let his company collapse because of a dirty scheme. Back at his apartment, Ethan dried off, changed clothes, and sat at his desk, opening his laptop and plugging in his phone. The videos he had recorded appeared on the screen, showing Mike receiving the bag, the envelope, the van's headlights reflecting off the faint logo on the man's raincoat, Cream X Distribution. Ethan rewound the video, pausing on the frame where the Cream X logo was clear, his eyes reflecting determination. He picked up his phone and dialed the number of Lawrence, a lawyer and old friend who had once helped Ethan in the early days of building the business. "Lawrence, I need you to help verify this video. I think Cream X is running a plan to sabotage the entire Happy Scoop system from the inside." There was a pause on the other end. Then Lawrence answered, "Send me everything. I'll handle it right away." That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in his chair, the yellow lamp casting light onto his hollowed face. Yet his eyes remained wide open, fixed on his laptop screen filled with evidence. Outside, the rain kept falling against the window, drawing streaks down the glass like tears, reflecting his face, the face of a father, a business owner, a man ready to fight for the dream he had spent his youth building. Inside Ethan, a silent vow echoed. Tomorrow, there will be no room for traitors, no more strange caramels slipping into my system, no more happy scoops bleeding quietly in the dark. Tomorrow, I will start exposing them all. At dawn, weak sunlight filtered through the window, landing on Ethan's contemplative face. His phone buzzed softly, A message from Lawrence flashing on the screen. The video is clear. The evidence is enough to launch an investigation, but you need to be careful. This is big. Ethan set the phone down. Taking a deep breath, he ran a hand through his messy hair, his eyes falling on an old photograph on the desk, a picture of him, his wife, and his daughter on the day they opened the first Happy Scoop shop. In the photo, he was beaming, a spoon of ice cream raised high, eyes sparkling with hope. "I will protect this dream, no matter what it takes," Ethan whispered. That afternoon, Ethan returned to the Greenway branch, stepping through the glass doors, the bell softly chiming. Rosa was wiping down the counter, her eyes flashing with surprise when she saw Ethan, quickly dropping her gaze. Mike stood behind the counter, his face clouded, dark circles under his eyes, tension etched into his expression. When he saw Ethan, he froze briefly before forcing a smile. "You're early," Mike managed. Ethan walked slowly closer, nodding. "Yeah, I have something to say today." Mike swallowed, his eyes shifting. "What is it?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He pulled out his phone, playing the video he had recorded the night before, letting the sound fill the quiet shop. The sound of rain, Mike's voice accepting the plastic bag, the man handing over the envelope, headlights catching the Creamex logo on the raincoat, Mike's face drained of color, his eyes wide, his hand gripping the edge of the counter, knuckles whitening. You were recording me." Mike's voice cracked, trembling. Ethan looked directly into his eyes, his voice low but calm, not angry. "Mike, I didn't have any other choice." Mike sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Uncle Ethan," Mike whispered, for the first time calling Ethan by his real name, no longer Mr. Moore. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Mike, I need the whole truth. Who forced you? Who's behind Creamex? I need to know." Mike looked up, eyes red, tears slipping down his cheeks. I don't know where to start. I owed hospital bills for my mum. I had no other way. Victor, a guy from Creamex, approached me, promised to pay off the debt if I helped get their caramel into the system. Ethan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, pushing down the sharp pain in his chest as he listened to Mike's confession. "Victor, was he the one who handed you the money that night?" Mike nodded, his voice shaking. "They said it was just testing a new product. They promised me $500 a week, but then they made me falsify inventory reports, bring in Creamex shipments, fake reports for the higher-ups. I messed up. I know I messed up." He broke down, burying his head in his arms, sobs echoing in the shop as it prepared to close for lunch. Ethan placed his hand on Mike's back, patting gently. "Mike, I can't protect you from the consequences of what you've done, but you can make this right." Mike lifted his tear-streaked face. "What do I have to do?" Ethan looked him in the eyes. "You're going to help me expose Victor and Creamex. We're going to stop this, save what's left of Happy Scoops, and save you." That afternoon, Ethan, Mike, and Rosa sat together in the small storage room, surrounded by boxes of Creamex caramel lined up on the shelves. Mike, trembling, opened his backpack, pulling out envelopes of cash, fake invoices, and messages from Victor detailing delivery times, storage passwords, shipment schedules. Rosa looked at Mike, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I didn't know it was this bad." Mike whispered, "Ethan, I'm sorry." Ethan squeezed Mike's shoulder gently. "Thank you for telling the truth. Now, we make a plan." Ethan took out his notebook, recording every detail. Mike provided delivery times, Victor's messages, calls from unknown numbers, locations where Cream X had made deliveries to other branches. He gathered every piece of evidence, mapping the connections between Cream X, Victor, and the hidden cash flowing through employees' hands. He knew this was dangerous, but he also knew it was the only way to save Happy Scoops from collapse. As he stepped out of the shop, Ethan looked up at the Happy Scoops sign under the grey evening sky. The neon light flickered weakly, like the laboured breath of a patient fighting to stay alive. "We won't fall," Ethan whispered, gripping the evidence-filled folder in his backpack. The next morning, Ethan sat in a small cafe, the bitter scent of coffee filling the warm air, in stark contrast to the storm rolling in outside. Across from him sat Lawrence the lawyer, hair peppered with grey, but eyes sharp, and Eliza, a private investigator who had once helped Ethan during his early startup days. Lawrence opened his laptop, projecting onto the screen anonymous cash transactions, scattered payments transferred from a shell company called Hudson Logistics, actually a subsidiary of Cream X, to employees across Happy Scoops branches. "Ethan," Lawrence said, voice deep, "this isn't just employee petty theft. This is an organized operation designed to systematically choke your company." Eliza flipped open a folder, showing photos of Victor, the man who had paid Mike, and a list of employees at 5 other branches who were receiving illegal bonuses to use Cream X caramel instead of Happy Scoops' original products. "You need to be ready," Eliza said firmly. "If we expose this, they will fight back. But if we don't, Happy Scoops will run out of cash within 3 months due to inflated costs and loss of reputation." Ethan's hands tightened around his coffee cup, the heat seeping through his fingers, but his heart felt cold thinking about those who had betrayed his trust, people who once called him the best boss they'd ever had. He looked up, eyes resolute. "We start today." That afternoon, Ethan returned to the Greenway branch, where Mike and Rosa were waiting in the storage room. On the table was the neatly organized folder Ethan had prepared: evidence, photos, messages, and a list of other branches infiltrated by Cream X. Mike trembled. "Ethan, are you sure if Victor finds out, he'll—" Ethan placed a hand on Mike's shoulder. "You're not alone anymore, Mike." Ethan opened a city map, marking the 5 other branches where Victor had secretly delivered Cream X products. Rosa, with her cashier experience, would help check storage reports and inventory, while Mike would quietly contact former employees Ethan trusted at those branches. "We'll check inventory, collect caramel samples, cross-check delivery dates, and gather more evidence," Ethan said, his voice firm. Rosa looked at Ethan, her eyes lighting up with determination. "We can do this." That night, inside the cold storage room at Greenway, Ethan and Mike quietly opened the newly delivered boxes of caramel. As the lids came off, the sweet, buttery scent filled the room. But each jar had a small Cream X marking, the kind only those who had worked in the industry would recognize. Ethan used his phone to photograph each jar, each batch number, the camera flash illuminating his determined face. The next day, Ethan drove to each branch, stopping in like any normal customer, ordering a caramel sundae, tasting the familiar but wrong flavor, the Cream X caramel. He discreetly took photos in the storage rooms, collected caramel samples from trusted employees, logged delivery times and truck license plates, all of it compiled on Eliza's laptop for the investigation. That evening, Ethan, Lawrence, and Eliza sat in a small room, piecing together the data Cream X used its subsidiary Hudson Logistics to deliver caramel to Happy Scoop's branches. Victor acted as the middleman, bribing cash-strapped employees with under-the-table payments in exchange for using Cream X caramel and falsifying inventory reports. The goal: raise operating costs, damage product reputation, and when Happy Scoops fell into crisis, Cream X would buy it out for cheap. Eliza closed the laptop. "We have enough to proceed legally." Lawrence nodded. "I'll prepare the cease and desist orders and request an emergency court injunction." Ethan stood, looking out the window at the city lights stretching into the night, reflecting in his eyes. "Tomorrow, we'll show Cream X that Happy Scoops won't go down easily." He remembered his wife's words. "It's not failure you should fear. It's the fear of not getting back up when you fall." Ethan whispered, "I will get back up." The next morning, the sky was grey, wind sweeping through damp streets, dry leaves swirling across the glass doors of Happy Scoop's headquarters. Ethan wore a dark suit, his tie neat, his eyes sharp as he walked through the main lobby. Employees bowing slightly, worry in their eyes. They had heard Ethan was returning to the office urgently, but no one knew what was about to unfold. He entered the meeting room where Lawrence, Eliza, and several trusted senior staff were waiting. On the table lay the thick folder containing all the evidence of Cream X's infiltration and sabotage. Lawrence cleared his throat. "Ethan, we've secured an emergency court order requiring Cream X to cease illegal deliveries immediately while allowing Happy Scoops to conduct an independent investigation." Eliza spoke, her voice crisp. "I've dispatched investigators to the affected branches to seize Cream X caramel as evidence. We're going to make the truth public." Ethan looked around, his eyes cold and clear. "Today, we show Cream X and those who betrayed us that Happy Scoops will not bow down." That afternoon, Ethan stood in his office, looking out the window, his hand gripping a stainless steel spoon, the symbol of the day he opened his first ice cream shop with his wife. He remembered Mike's tears, Rosa's fearful eyes, the trust of the employees who had stayed by his side. They deserved to be protected. At 4 p.m., the press conference began. The press room was packed, camera lights flashing, reporters lined up tightly. Ethan stepped forward, dressed in a sharp suit, his face firm, yet his eyes warm. He looked directly into the cameras. "Hello, I'm Ethan Miller, founder and CEO of Happy Scoops." He paused, taking a deep breath. Today, I'm standing here to reveal to our customers, employees, and community the truth about a plot that has been attempting to sabotage our system from within. Ethan began detailing the evidence. Piece by piece, the video of Victor making illegal deliveries, the bribery messages, the under-the-table cash transactions. Cream X has been trying to infiltrate our system, push us to the brink of collapse, so they could buy happy scoops for cheap. The room fell silent. A reporter raised their hand. What about the employees who were involved? Ethan looked directly into the camera, his voice low but clear. I know many of them were forced by circumstances, by hospital bills, by fear of losing their jobs. Happy Scoops will not abandon them. Those who come forward honestly will be protected and will keep their jobs if they truly want to start over. He paused, his voice softening. We don't just make ice cream. We make values. Happy Scoops isn't just a company. We are a family. Another reporter asked, "Do you think the company will survive this shock?" Ethan smiled, his eyes steady. I have no doubt. Customers don't just believe in product quality, they believe in honesty. We will rebuild, stronger, more transparent, and open. Right after the press conference, articles spread rapidly across social media. CEO Ethan Miller exposes Cream X's plot to sabotage Happy Scoops, a company that dares to tell the truth. Customers share emotional support as Happy Scoops stands by its employees. That evening, Ethan returned to the Greenway branch, where the neon Happy Scoops sign still flickered in the rainy street. Rosa and Mike were cleaning the counter, looking at Ethan with different eyes filled with gratitude and trust. Mike stepped forward, his voice choked. "Uncle Ethan, thank you." Ethan patted Mike on the shoulder. "Tomorrow, we start again." Outside, the rain stopped, wind sweeping across the signs reflecting streetlights, shining on Ethan's face as he looked up at the night sky. His wife's words echoed in his mind, "No matter how big the storm is, if you hold on to kindness, everything will be okay." Ethan smiled, nodding softly. 3 days after the press conference, the atmosphere at Happy Scoops headquarters was tense as a wire. Ethan sat in the meeting room, his phone buzzing constantly with calls from partners, customers, and even anonymous threats. Across the table, Lawrence placed a thick envelope down, his eyes serious. Cream X has filed a countersuit against Happy Scoops for defamation, claiming damage to their reputation and business disruption. Ethan looked Lawrence straight in the eye, his voice calm. "We have enough evidence." "Yes, but they have a massive legal team, ready to drag us into a lawsuit that could last for years," Lawrence replied, even as he tried to hide the concern in his voice. That afternoon, Ethan walked down the office hallway, seeing employees whispering to each other, their eyes heavy with worry. Some looked down as they passed, others paused, searching Ethan's face for a glimpse of hope. Rosa stepped forward, clutching her apron. "Mr. Ethan, they're saying Cream X will sue to shut Happy Scoops down. Is it true?" Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. "No, they can't. We didn't lie. Rosa, the truth will always stand." That night, Ethan sat in his office, the yellow lamp casting light on his tired but determined face. He looked at a photo of his daughter, her innocent smile softening his heart. "Daddy will keep his promise, sweetheart." He stood, pulling out his phone, calling Eliza. "Call the investigative team. I want every document, photo, witness statement, and testimony ready in case we go to court." In the morning, the sky was grey, fog curling around the cold glass buildings. Ethan stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, his hands trembling slightly, his eyes meeting themselves hollowed from sleepless nights, but still burning with determination. He gently touched his daughter's photo on the desk, his voice trembling. "Today, I fight for you, for everyone who believes in kindness." Outside the courthouse, lines of reporters, cameras, and microphones rose in a sea of anticipation. Lawrence, Eliza, and the core team of Happy Scoop's employees stepped out of the vehicle with Ethan. Camera flashes exploded, voices calling out, "Mr. Ethan, are you afraid of losing Mr. Ethan? Will you close Happy Scoops if you lose this case? Do you believe justice will be on your side?" Ethan paused, turning to the cameras, his voice warm and steady. "We're not fighting Cream X for profit. We're standing up for the values they disregarded. We still believe justice exists." Inside the courtroom, the air was heavy, footsteps echoing sharply. Across the table, Cream X's representatives, Victor and his team of lawyers, sat with arms crossed, eyes arrogant, smirks of challenge playing at the corners of their mouths. Ethan looked directly at Victor, no anger in his eyes, only a calm that was far more intimidating. The trial began. Cream X's lawyer stood, his voice smooth. "Your Honor, this is a blatant defamation case meant to tarnish Cream X's good name." Lawrence stood, his voice calm but resolute. "Your Honor, we have undeniable evidence, photos, messages, recordings, and direct witness testimonies proving that Cream X executed a systematic plan to sabotage Happy Scoops." On the large screen, Eliza displayed the video of Victor handing cash to Mike in the rainy night. The images of Cream X caramel boxes in Happy Scoop's storage, and the recorded threats Victor made to Ethan. The courtroom was silent, even the sound of breathing heavy. Victor's face went pale, Cream X's lawyers fumbling, whispering hurriedly among themselves. Rosa was called to the stand. She stood, holding the microphone, her voice shaking. "We were forced to use Cream X caramel. They threatened to fire us, to cut our pay if we didn't comply." Her voice broke, tears falling. "But Uncle Ethan, he protected us. He didn't abandon us." Mike was called up. He stood, tension in his face, eyes red. "I was wrong. I took the money. But I didn't want to betray Happy Scoops. I just wanted to save my mom." Mike broke down, crying. Ethan sat below, his eyes burning, his hands clenching tightly. Cream X's lawyer lashed out. "These testimonies are worthless. They are Mr. Ethan's employees. They will say anything." Lawrence calmly presented financial statements, fake invoices, photos of Hudson Logistics license plates, and Cream X's subsidiary documents. Each piece of evidence displayed, building a logical chain that could not be denied. Finally, Ethan was asked to speak. He stood, walking to the center of the courtroom, the light shining on his calm face. "Happy Scoops is not just an ice cream company. It is the dream of workers trying to raise their children with honesty. We're not wealthy. We don't have powerful legal armies, but we have the truth." He paused, looking at Victor. "You think you can buy everything with money, even silence. But the truth cannot be bought." The room was silent. The judge looked down, writing notes, his voice deep. "This court will review the evidence and testimonies. A verdict will be delivered within 48 hours. The gavel came down sharply, ending the session. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of people waited. As Ethan stepped out, they erupted into applause, voices shouting. The judge paused, the entire room frozen, every breath held. "Therefore, the court orders Cream X must immediately cease all infringing activities and fully compensate Happy Scoops for financial damages while issuing a public apology through the media. Furthermore, individuals involved will be subject to criminal investigation." The gavel struck, sharp and final, closing a long battle. The room erupted. Mike broke down in tears. Rosa smiled through tears. Lawrence gripped Ethan's hand, his own eyes glassy, a satisfied smile on his lips. Eliza gently patted Ethan's shoulder. "You did it." Ethan stood silently for a moment, taking a deep breath, eyes lifting to the ceiling where light glittered, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had already gathered. As Ethan stepped out, a wave of applause rose, rolling like thunder, voices calling out, "Ethan! Happy Scoops! Truth has won." A small child ran up, holding out a caramel ice cream cone, eyes bright with excitement. "I love your ice cream." Mr. Ethan knelt down, a warm smile spreading across his face as he took the ice cream. "Thank you, kiddo. This is why I never give up." Ethan looked around at each person, seeing Rosa's eyes glistening with tears, Mike's proud gaze, the faces of people who had once lived in fear but now stood tall. "I know you were scared. I was scared too, but you chose to believe in me, to believe in Happy Scoops, to believe that we were doing the right thing." He paused for a moment. "And today, I want you to know, you are the reason Happy Scoops still exists." Ethan raised the stainless steel spoon high above his head, the symbol of those first days, catching the light and reflecting it in shimmering sparks. "Starting tomorrow, Happy Scoops will begin a new chapter. We will be more transparent, more fair, and we will protect our employees better, so no one will ever have to bow their head in fear of losing their job, in fear of losing their paycheck." The crowd erupted in applause, clapping blending with tears falling, but this time they were tears of joy. Late that night, Ethan sat alone in the shop after closing, the soft yellow light filling the quiet space, the hum of the ice cream freezer a steady, gentle background. He opened his phone, looking at a photo of his daughter when she was little, her innocent smile, eyes sparkling. A tear slipped down his cheek, but his lips curved into a peaceful smile. "Sweetheart, I kept my promise.